Good afternoon and welcome to St. Mark's Lutheran and our Bible study on the book of, on James. Today we're picking up in chapter 2 on the favoritism and the forbidden and some of those things in that area. So we invite you to turn to your Bibles at home and to follow along. As you have read this, what are the things that kind of jump out at you in terms of these first probably, I'm going to say maybe 10, 12 verses? Was there anything that struck you about what James is saying to us about how we behave or should behave or how we should deal with one another?
Well, to me, first of all, it seems as though he's being kind of specific. So it seems like he's kind of addressing a problem he must recognize that exists in this group that he's speaking to. But I think it's a problem that we can all have, and that is the partiality. It's thinking those people as compared to us. You know, we're sitting in the pew, or we're the ones that are listening, so we must be a little better, or maybe it's class, or maybe it's money, something along. There's some separating, earthly separating value there that these people must be kind of hung up on within this group.
True.
Well, if we were to have a homeless person standing at the door coming in on Sunday morning, how many of us would feel comfortable or uncomfortable with that presence?
And that has happened here.
Yeah.
That does happen.
Yeah.
Or when we're open.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
we've been open, that is something that's
True.
very, very common. And I think it is within all churches that we are supposed to be caring for the poor, the homeless, those who are in need, and yet we are very uncomfortable. What is that uncomfort or discomfort?
It's opening yourself up. It's making yourself vulnerable. Because there might be a security issue, or your neighbors might look at you and see that you're associating with people that one shouldn't associate with. So there's a vulnerability there that we don't like to put ourselves in a situation like that.
Well, yeah. Part of it on my part is just talking to a strange person, whether homeless or not. I'm probably not going to serve as a greeter at the door. It just takes me a while. I'm trying to work at that, but
everybody has different
it's a hard
gifts.
thing.
Some
It's
people
really
are very
a hard
good at
thing for
that.
me
Some
to
folks
do.
aren't, and
Yeah.
so we all have these different gifts.
What would the majority of our congregation do if a homeless person at the very beginning during that opening hymn were to walk in and walk towards the front? What would be the level of anxiety on the part of the majority of the congregation?
I can't speak to that.
I think it is high, rather a little higher than middle. Anyway, I don't know, it's just me. I don't know what people will do.
The reason I ask, we have one, and I see him, and if I ever have a chance, I'd like to visit with him, individual that walks the street many times barefooted.
Okay.
He's relatively young, pigtails,
Yeah,
and
I think I've seen him here.
he, it would be interesting to visit with him. And yet most of them are also afraid to
They
come
are?
in here. I mean, it's not just us
No, yeah.
fearful of their coming in and feeling uncomfortable, but they also would feel uncomfortable.
Right.
What does that say about the Christian? that we have a ways to go?
Oh, absolutely. But I don't think it's so much, well, it makes the Christian work harder at it. Maybe we recognize that and just but if you have that tendency not to talk to strange people, it's really doesn't matter.
Okay.
I don't know the people that just moved in upstairs in my apartment. I don't know when I'll see, if I don't run into them on the sidewalk kind of thing, I'm probably not going to make the effort.
Okay. You aren't going to go and knock on their door and bring them a plate of cookies?
No,
Okay.
I don't think you can make it upstairs with cookies and.
don't bake in the first place, and I'm not going upstairs second place, so there you are.
And with a cane, it's almost
Then-
impossible.
Yeah, then you're not going to go.
So here verse 2 says, suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but says to the poor man, you stand there or sit on the floor by my feet. Have you not discriminated? And that's an interesting term. It's not a biblical term. It's a term in the
Yeah, but they
translators.
use,
Discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts. Why are those evil thoughts?
It is judging. It's a judging where that's not our place. Christ tells us that that's not our place to judge others.
Right.
But don't we all do it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's the first, it's just there. The judgment is there before you, so you have to consciously put it away.
Okay. Then
But the evil thoughts, so what makes it evil? Or do you just have it, maybe it's not evil, maybe it's a wondering, you're curious, or you don't know who these people are.
I think in my book, for instance, it doesn't say discriminate. Mine says, but have you not made distinctions amongst yourself? And I think what he's talking about, it isn't that wondering, it isn't the sizing someone up, it's that judgment that you've come to. You've gone past just the meeting somebody and taking information in. Now you've made a decision about this person.
And that's where you're going to be.
That's where you start going.
Judgment.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think we're always going to wonder. Like the gentleman you were just speaking of that walks the street sometimes. There's a lot that you would like to know. You have wonder, and you'd like to know. But when we look at people and make that distinction, it's like, no, I think we'll close the door now. Maybe even lock it before this person makes his way down the street towards our door.
Probably so.
Those types of, once you've made those decisions, you've actually put them to one side or the other. That's the discriminate to one side or the other.
Okay.
True.
Listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor to the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him? What is the key Jesus is saying here?
Yeah, that God has made the judgment already.
And faith and inheriting the kingdom has nothing to do with what? Earthly circumstances.
Right.
But yet, we, as we deal with one another, and even it's not just based on rich and poor, there are
Any
many
difference.
Factors within a church.
Any kind of difference.
I
Right.
stop and think of one parish, and I think I've mentioned him in the past. Carl he and his two old maid sisters lived in a house. They never owned a car, when he wanted to go to town, he drove the tractor. Because they were only 1.25 miles from town, so it wasn't a biggie. But he would do that, and nephews and nieces would always shake the hands. But you never saw him without a pair of bib overalls, always with some rips and always dirty, and a Carhartt jacket and a hat. And you would think, oh, who is this individual?
Right.
Yet, we would go and I would take communion there about once every 5 to 6 weeks, it varied. And one of the things that Carl shared was that he still had grain in storage from 6 years before that he was paying to store rather than selling it because he would owe too much money to the government.
Okay.
But when he died, he left all of his nephews and nieces $100,000, but he left the university, Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa, about $2.5 million.
2.5. Oh my.
Yet you would have thought he
Had nothing.
had nothing, because he never was
That's why he had all the
concerned.
money.
He was never concerned about being stylish or having the best suit or anything, as long as he was comfortable. And, again, listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him? Here was an individual who definitely loved him. But you would have thought, based on the world's standards, he was absolutely penniless.
Right.
Never having a car, always having to drive the tractor to get to town. Just unbelievable. But you have dishonored the poor. It is not the rich who are exploiting you. Are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? Stop and think about that. Who always is dragging you to court? Who's paying, well, let's see, it's the 444 guy and
Right.
Henry and I don't know, there's 3 or 4 of them
Right.
on. But they're always talking about the settlements that they get. You also notice their allotment is more than what the people are getting.
Okay.
The one, the attorneys is 21 million and 15 million or something for 18 million for the consumer. But it is not the poor that are dragging us to court. It's the rich. And it's the rich who are getting richer by. Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong? And it assumes that we belong to whom?
To Jesus, to Christ, to the Lord.
Right, to God,
Yeah.
whatever term you want to
Yeah.
use. If you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself. What about those that don't love themselves? How can they love someone else?
Right.
That is a big assumption that we all love ourselves and therefore we should love our neighbor the same. And I think that could be said and very true, that we need to love one another. But how can that get in the way? How does it get in the way of our sometimes loving someone?
That we don't love ourselves?
Yeah. Or even if we do.
I guess I don't understand the question.
In other words,
if,
go ahead.
If you might love yourself more, and you think you're more important, or you call those people selfish, because they don't share. with someone else. They don't look out for other people.
They look out only for themselves.
Yeah.
Even when you say you love yourself, you are looking out for number one, me.
Right.
Whereas the poor, they aren't as concerned about me as us, usually. At least in those
Maybe.
instances, well, yeah. At least in those instances where I've talked with some of those people
Right.
who come in, they are usually always concerned about others. You know, so-and-so is having trouble with gout or whatever it is that their
True, yeah.
people. And they share that quite
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
And so there is a different degree many times between the poor and the rich when it comes to dealing with others. And it's not, well, we'll see. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers. For whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles at just one point is guilty of breaking all of it. Ooh, that's a rather harsh indictment, isn't
It's
it?
a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
Is it fair?
I don't think it's an issue of fairness. I think that, I mean, in rabbinical law, in rabbinical conversations, that's what the rabbis do, is kind of parse it out and figure out, you know, even in Catholicism and in Christianity, there's some sins that are mortal, some that aren't, and you try to parse these out. But you know, God never, you know, those subtexts, those subscripts were never in the commandments. Those laws came out, and those are the laws.
Yeah.
So what James is saying here is it's true. It's true. If there's 600 and some odd rules, laws, but you break one, what are you? You're a lawbreaker. And what is he saying is that don't set yourself up. Don't think that just because you've attained, you know, you followed 590 of these laws, that you're better than this person who's transgressed 600 of them. You know, don't make those distinctions. You know, you break one law, you're a lawbreaker. You break 500 laws, you're a lawbreaker. There's no distinction between you two in the mind of God. You're no better than the other person.
In other words, you are a sinner.
A sinner.
Yeah.
You're convicted.
For which
Yeah.
Jesus came to grant us forgiveness. And are there some individuals out there that try to convince you they don't break any laws?
Oh, yes.
They aren't guilty of being a lawbreaker? That they don't need Jesus because they're good?
Good enough is what this is.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what about somebody who only says, I hate you, doesn't pick up the actual knife, and Jesus says, you are a murderer?
You are.
How then does that apply? So is it just the actions, or is it also the thoughts that make us a lawbreaker?
Well, it says somewhere there, if it's even in your thought, you've broken the law.
Broken the law.
If a man who thinks of another woman, he's already broken the law in his heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom, because judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Ooh.
Uh-huh.
What do you make of that? Mercy triumphs over judgment.
I don't think that he's not in the business, he's not interested in killing us. The judgment is thou shalt die, you know. That's
Yeah.
not what's in his heart, is to kill us for our sins. It's just not in his heart. He loves us. So that love is stronger than his judgment of saying, his convicting us of our sins, which we need to be aware of and know. But his mercy, it's saying that it does triumph over that, because once you come to him, the first one, the second great important law was love each other, love your neighbor as yourself. But the first one comes first, and that is loving God, coming to God. So that's what he wants. His judgment, that conviction, it's his way of getting one to recognize him. I am your God. And if you do in your heart come to God, well, then his mercy will overcome that judgment.
Okay. So we go from that mercy, which will triumph over judgment, to faith and deeds. And this is an area that Lutherans sometimes have a difficult time, because we say, works aren't the way into heaven. But without works, do we have faith? So we're at 14, verse 14.
Right. There's a note about that just said it really well, and I have to find it. In the notes there, James is not saying that a person is saved by works and not by genuine faith. He is saying that people are justified, they're declared righteous before God by faith alone, but not by a faith that is alone. The faith itself, you can't just say, I have faith, and then you're sitting there and you haven't been to church and you haven't read the Bible and you haven't prayed and you haven't done anything, but you say you have faith. There has to be some evidence. Your faith has to do something.
I could ask the question, does it have to do something for God, or does it have to do something for your neighbor?
Both.
Either.
I'm thinking that the faith belongs to God, the works belong to your neighbors.
Okay,
That's
another
how I-
way
that's
to-
kinda
yeah,
how I
that's
see
another
it.
way to put it.
Yeah. And who
the-
saves us?
the
Our
faith-
neighbor? No, God saves us.
yeah.
So you need that faith, but you're right. You're right.
But some action, you either say hello, or greet somebody, or be nice, or give somebody something, or share the gospel, or some act that conveys that.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier when we were talking about loving our neighbor as yourself. So what do you do when you love yourself? You feed yourself.
Yeah,
One of the most simple things that one does is feeds themselves, right? I mean, if you want to stay alive, you need to pick up a piece of food and eat it. It's loving yourself. So loving your neighbor is simply
taking care
a
of
little
them
food,
too. Yeah, a
you know,
little bit.
something.
Something.
loving. It's a verb.
Right.
Love. He means that as a verb, as an action word.
But one of the hardest things that sometimes I find with people that I'm doing counseling with, I say, pat yourself on the back for a good job. And they have
Yeah.
a great difficulty in doing that. Yet, God still loves them. He still loves us. But if we can't do this and go out and do something in that faith, what happens? Does the faith pretty soon die? Or become shriveled and...
It can become
Yeah,
weak, and then when
yeah.
your faith is weak, you're opening yourself to the devil and to earthly
Thinking
things.
it's just like any other gift or talent that you have. If you don't use it at all, it goes away. your gift for preaching, if you didn't use that all these years, you wouldn't be able to get up and do it now as well as maybe you did it at first. You just lose it. If you have a musical talent, you don't develop it or use it at least in some way. After so many years, you don't have it. It's just not there. I think the same thing with faith. If you don't use that faith, if it just sits there, it either dies or at least it gets pretty weak and you have to look for it hard when you really need it.
Gets rusty.
It does.
And it creaks and it hurts.
It
And
does. It has to be used in some way.
Like
A
a
little
language
bit.
almost. If you don't use that language, you know, if you're not
That
speaking that every day
right.
and
Yeah.
interacting, using it, it doesn't come natural. It doesn't
no, it
come
doesn't.
as it should.
right, and that's why in verse 17 it says, in the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by actions, is dead.
It is. Pretty much.
But someone who will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. That's important to remember, isn't it? Faith is going to be shown in the deeds that
It
we
is.
do.
The next verse 19, as I've read, is actually part of that sentence, and that gets left out there. This is that same person saying this. You believe that God is one, you do well. Is one. If you believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. It's kind of strange, but that's part of that sentence. And I think that, the problem there is that he's parsing the two. He's kind of saying this comes with, he's trying to separate that. This is a person who's trying to say, measure my faith by my works. And that's not what James is saying.
Yeah.
The measure of your works is not a measure of your faith. Because, even the devil knows who Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and does he do good works? No. Maybe some, but no, he doesn't. But he believes in Christ. So, but this person
There
is.
is. He believes that there is.
He knows exactly who he
Yeah.
is. Yeah. And there's power and
The last
yeah.
couple of Sundays, or when you had the gospel about the casting out the demons, and they said,
They don't want anything to do.
they don't want, why are you bothering me, son of God or son of man? They know who he is, and they don't want to deal with it. Satan does. He knows. But he doesn't want to deal with God.
And that's why he gets those who are weak
Right.
to challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Very easy to slip in there when your faith is weak.
you
And
read,
just like looking at your language, it's easy to forget that. Get in there, just as an example, if you can't communicate using this other language that you know, pretty soon you're forgetting what words mean, and pretty soon you don't know what you're saying. And somebody will come along and say, "Oh, this is how you say that." Oh, okay. And then you say it. Well, that's not what you mean. Pretty soon and your
lose
faith
it.
is the same way.
Yeah.
We're so open to that. So by exercising that faith every day in word, thoughts, deeds,
Right.
we keep strong.
And that's why it's interesting in that verse, it says the demons even shudder
They do.
with Jesus, with God, and what will happen to them, because it is something that's very real. So then verse 20, you foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, it was credited to him as righteousness, and he was called God's friend. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone.
And it's important to say that righteousness does not mean saved. Those are, it's not the same thing. A person can be very righteous, always do the right thing, but if they don't have faith in God, they're not saved.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but the righteousness is, again, it's more for it's what we do in our lives. Faith is something in my heart and my mind that I feel and I know. It's a known belief in God. That's my faith. The righteousness comes with how do I act? How do I act in this world with that faith? And so that's what it's almost a reflection of that faith in this three-dimensional world that we live in.
So what happens when a person goes out, and a faithful person goes out and kills someone? What are you?
They're a convicted sinner. They're a sinner.
They are a sinner, but what kind of a sinner if they knew what they were doing? When we sin, do we normally know that we're sinning?
Not always, sometimes. Yes, you have, what is it?
Conscious.
Sin. Well, sin that I knew I did, and sin because I didn't know that I should have done it, something. That, too. Forget the terms.
I think that we're so good at sinning that is our natural language sometimes.
It is.
Talking about language.
It is our
It's
natural
just a
language.
reversion back to this bent existence, this broken existence that we have.
Right.
Our nature is, through Adam is broken, and that becomes our nature. So someone who knows God and has faith in God, who does something terrible, whatever it takes this person to talk himself and to allow himself to do this horrendous deed, I don't know. But it's the evil. It's something, the evil that creeps in us, and it's always around us.
Right.
And we're very
Well.
open to it, unfortunately.
Okay. What should we be telling sinners then?
What do you mean?
What do we tell a sinner?
A believing sinner?
That's
or-
us.
That's all
A
of us.
believing sinner. A believing sinner versus a non-believing sinner.
That they need to confess to themselves, to God.
If you believe, because God is important to somebody who at least acknowledges Him. But the person who does not acknowledge God, are
That's
they just
another-
lost?
They're a lost
Not
sheep.
my,
They're still loved, but they are lost.
not my judgment call.
But they're lost.
Probably, but that's still,
I mean, there are fabulously rich people and horribly destitute people that can all be lost.
true,
in
they
the
are,
world.
yeah. And by what they do and say and act, it shows whether they believe or not, and,
They're like a leaf blowing in the wind.
right.
So what do we say to them? That there is hope? that they're loved.
How can we evangelize that person who really does not know or believe in God?
I don't know. That's not something I'm good at.
I don't know either.
That's I mean, isn't that one of the most important missions that Christ asks us to do? Is to help him, gather his sheep.
But how does it really work?
I've never been good at that.
No, I don't know.
Isn't that probably the most difficult thing for a Christian to do? It's difficult for him to evangelize even a Christian, but someone who is not a Christian.
Yeah.
I have no idea, because, I know that people just, if you want to help somebody and they don't want your help, you aren't going to help them. Just some physical thing. If they don't want your help, you're wasting your time. So I don't know what, I think it probably works the same way. If they don't want to hear you.
Jesus said, wipe the dust off your shoes and move on to the next place. Is that kind of like this, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Is a target-rich world.
Because there are people that do want your help, and, and you can help them, and you get something. You do accomplish that. Which doesn't mean that you don't go back and try again, maybe. If you have some opening or some other contact with these people, what do? You don't just walk up and say, "Are you saved?"
Yeah, and there you just made a good point.
Because there
why
are people
don't you
that do that.
Well, because society, if I do it at work, I could get in trouble for it. If I do it around my friends,
Well,
and
they
it's
just
like,
don't listen. They
this
don't
guy's
hear you.
always trying
Yeah.
to. If you do it around, family, extended family, you can get that. There's a lot of.
Yeah.
We can. There's a persecution there, even if it's a slight. Christ, and Paul's, they were persecuted very viciously. I may not be persecuted that viciously, but there's still a persecution there. There's still a furrowing of the brow. I can get in trouble if I'm at work. What if I do it if I say something to somebody's child or somebody's family member? Then what are you doing here? There's all these little ways that I can get in trouble. So I'm afraid. So there are things that make me afraid to do it, even in 2021. And some of it can just be me. There could be nothing anybody is going to say, but it's still, what is this person going to think about me? Even I judge myself like that. I want this person to respect me. He is a nice person. I'd like them to respect me. I'm not going to bring up Christ in this conversation. I don't know what to say all the time. I can convict myself of not being a very good representative of God, of Jesus.
And yet, flying back from Wisconsin, the airport, striking up a conversation,
Well, I guess that's the opportunity, when you have to see that the opportunity is there to say something, or in some way you make open a conversation and try to direct it that way. You never know when you're going to meet someone like that. But just to go out and...
knock on a door.
Yeah.
Cold turkey.
That's right.
In our culture, I don't know that that's well received.
Right.
At all.
Because it's
I think
abused.
you always have to find the opportunity. So you have to look for that. A lot of it with our pandemic and all of the needs that are going on, there is a lot of help going on and spreading the gospel in that way. First they feed a group, and if the church feeds the group, then they've opened the door.
Then you have to stay
you
for
have to
the
read.
timeshare lecture. So a lot of them think it's a bait and switch. So there's always this, there's a lot of,
But, I've read of some churches doing that now, or not really the church, or a group from the church, from some group, and they gather up food and feed another group.
And that's the message, right?
And that's the opening the door.
Yeah, that's, I was going to say that, and I've been to this church now for about 3 years, and something I've noticed, and this is a very Lutheran thing, I think, is that when we have dinners or lunches, there isn't a, now it's time for the timeshare lecture moment. It's thanks for coming. Have a great night. Because the message was just sitting down.
It was the fellowship.
Just come and have dinner with us. That's
Right.
That's it. It's not, okay, now we're going to give you a little
We didn't
brochure and a spiel here about
know.
how, no, and I like that. I think that's very welcoming. I think that because the message is just having them with us for dinner.
Going on, in the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead.
That story in Joshua, that's a great story. The whole thing. Go spy out that land and see what's going on.
Caleb and his
And they did such a good job, and then they got turned down. Said, nope. I thought, oh my, that happens. What a good program for this congregation. Nope, we're not going to do that.
Now, in your version, and you just read it, and I missed what you said, how you read it, but for instance, mine says, you see that a person is justified by works now. Okay, 25. Likewise, was not Rahab the prostitute also justified by works when she welcomed messengers and sent before the body? I don't know that is James, when he was saying was not Rahab justified by works, is he saying that justified by God or justified by the ones who dealt with her and the people that were supported by her actions? They feel she was justified. Is that what he's saying? Or is she saying that because she wasn't a believer in God, right? She may have believed in the power of the Israelites.
She knew
Yahweh.
about God.
Okay.
And she had heard about the Israelites and their God.
Okay. So I'm curious about his justification. Was she justified by her work? Justified by God, as Abraham was justified by his works? Is that what you believe?
That's
Is that
what
you're
I
saying?
hear
Okay.
that's what James is talking about, and this
Okay.
is another example.
Right. And it all goes to say, look, every person has what? An equal opportunity of
Right.
faith and good deeds, good works. Until we go to the next chapter.
The taming of the tongue.
And that is something that has always been a problem.
Oh, yeah,
It goes back to Eve.
yeah.
You know, and so as we prepare for next week, we'll talk about the tongue.
Okay.
And
That small rudder.
that small rudder, that stumbling, that it gets us into more trouble
It does.
than any other thing that we could have or do.
It can cause a lot of pain.
Because it can hurt just by what we say, how we say it, or what we don't say.
Right.
And there are so many people that have anymore, I call it potty mouth. Because
Yes.
they are, you know, and I think we all have slipped, but there is something with some people, every other word is basically a cuss word or whatever. And I know we had a friend that was talking with our daughter and was on the phone, and Alice was able to hear. And she said, I think you need to clean up your vocabulary here a little bit because it was very offensive. And we don't always realize, maybe we realize, but we don't take it as serious, the words that we say. And I think that's something we need to be thinking about as Christians. What is it that we can say that either will turn a person against God or in favor of God? And those are the two biggies.
You know, what's funny is how much commercialism and how much we care about how we smell to each other. But man, we just don't care how we sound to each other. You know,
okay.
When you present, you should always smell nice and all these perfumes, all these things, so you smell.
And look-
you know,
and
but
look
when you
great,
have
you
that
know.
smelly verbiage and that words coming out, it's as though that doesn't matter. That I'm expressing my freedom to do. Oh, I can't express my freedom to stink or to smell however way. Oh no, that's not that. We don't accept that. It's just funny. It's just a sense what we hear and what we smell. I don't understand.
I've never heard it put quite that way.
I haven't either, but
It's
that's
huge,
true.
multi-billion-dollar, corporations, all built on how we smell to each other,
Right.
not how we sound to each other. That's all. I can sound any way I want. That's
It's your freedom.
my
of-
freedom to do.
Freedom
Freedom
of
of speech. There you go.
is a
Yeah,
big thing. And how bad
yeah.
is your speech has nothing to do with it.
Well, Christ, it's what's in your heart, really. So it's coming out of their heart.
Right, but don't tell me I can't say it. Ah,
Yeah.
It's my right.
it's my right.
It's kind of
Whether-
like it works because of your faith. If you have that feeling in your heart, then you should sound like that. You should have those works. If you have a smelly heart or an ugly heart, then you have ugliness coming out of your mouth and your smell. And
Uh-huh.
so it's it's the works. If you have that strong faith, then one knows that because of how you act around each other. I wonder if there's a
Skateboard.
okay.
Okay, let's just close with a word of prayer. Lord God, we give you thanks for your word and ask that you be with us. Grant us peace. Help us to understand what it is that we are to be about and to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay.